You are listening to the Heartland Author Podcast. I am Aaron Apollo Camp. For today's episode, I had the opportunity to interview Morgan McCarver. Morgan is a ceramic artist and the author of God the Artist, revealing God's creative side through poetry. I'm here with Morgan McCarver, who is a ceramic pottery business owner and the author of God the Artist, revealing God's creative side through poetry. Morgan, welcome to the Heartland Author Podcast.
Hi, Aaron. Thank you for having me.
Feel free to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Sure. So my name is Morgan McCarver. I am a ceramic artist. And so for those of you who might not know what that is, I deal with clay, so pottery-related things. I use a lot of porcelain in my work. I do blue and white kind of aesthetics. And then you're right, I'm also an author of God the Artist, and that is coming out. It will be released in January of 2024, and I'm really excited about that, and it can be pre-ordered now.
Now, without spoiling too much of your book that's available for pre-order now, what will God the Artist be about?
Sure. So it's revealing God's creative side through pottery. So it is my experience as a Christian artist. So I was reading the Bible and I noticed there are a lot of references to ceramics and to pottery. And those verses don't always get highlighted, of course. And coming from my ceramic background, I really wanted to read a book that kind of just enlightened the Christian side mixed with the ceramic side and really kind of delved into those verses from an artist standpoint. And Aaron, I actually couldn't find a book like that. So I felt God calling me to write it, and that's kind of how God the Artist came about. So it is an inspirational account of the aspects of pottery and how that's referenced in the Bible.
Morgan James Publishing is the publisher of your book, is that correct?
That is correct, and they've been great to work with.
Could you go into more detail on what it's like to work with the Morgan James Publishing to get your book published and available for pre-order?
Of course. They've been great from the very beginning. And every step along the way, there's a different experienced and knowledgeable person who comes in alongside of you and really helps you and answers questions. And it's really been great to work with them. Even from the very beginning, when I emailed over my manuscript, Terry Wallen was my contact, and he said, this is a great idea, but it needs to be twice as long. And I said, okay, thank you so much for the feedback, and thank you for not saying no immediately. And I jumped on that and did exactly what he asked. I made it twice as long in about a week and a half, sent it back to him, and the rest is history, as they say. I, of course, had to apply, and they read my manuscript and thought that it was something they wanted to publish, and I just praise God for that. And it's been an amazing experience ever since.
What were the easiest and most difficult aspects of writing a book for you?
Sure. I started in 2019 writing this book, and I tried to get it published around that time, and nobody really wanted to publish it. The only interest I got was someone who said that I would need someone to come in and pretty much rewrite the whole thing for me, and I would need to pay a lot of money for that, and I really wanted this to be my own words, and I truly believe that God called me to write this book, and so if He's calling me to write the book, then I need to be the one to write it, of course. And so I just prayed a lot at that time, and God, I felt like He was telling me that I didn't have enough experience to really publish this book. So that was 2019, and I kind of just set my dream aside, thinking 30, 40 years down the line, I'll have enough experience, that'll be great. And then really January of this year, 2023, I felt the Lord calling me and saying, that book that you were writing, you should probably revisit that. And that's what happened, and He was gracious enough to give me the time to write, and so I pretty much wrote the whole thing in about 3 or 4 weeks, and that was one of the hardest things, just trying to find the publisher, and And I reached out to a lot of publishing companies that I really liked the books that I was reading. And I was just praying. I was just saying, God, this is all in your hands. If you want me to do this, then it's got to be completely from you. I've never written a book before. I've never published anything. I don't have any contacts, and I have zero experience. And I really just gave it all to God, and he allowed one publisher to just love it so much that they accepted my book. And I knew that was a sign from him. And thankfully, that was Morgan James.
You own a ceramics business. Can you tell us more about that?
Of course. It's called Morgan McCarver Porcelain, and it's run and owned by me. I'm the sole employee, and it's based in Asheville, North Carolina. That's kind of where I have my studio, and I'm able to do festivals around the area between the Carolinas and Tennessee. And I also have my work in galleries, about 8 or 9 galleries between the Carolinas and Tennessee as well. And it's everything from throwing pottery on the wheel like you see on TV to hand building to slip casting. That's my most common method of making work. So I've made a prototype that I like, and I make a plaster mold based on that prototype. And then I'm able to pour liquid clay into that mold called slip. And so I'm casting slip. So I'm able to get the same shape replicated every time. And then that allows me to kind of create sets of things. And I have designs that I have hand-drawn and copyrighted from wildflower inspiration in the area. So I have 4 different patterns that I use: thistle, dogwood, wisteria, and violet. And these are just wildflowers that I've grown up with in the Carolinas, and that also symbolize feminine strength. And so I use those in my work as well.
What are some of the challenges you face with being a small business owner, particularly since you're the only employee and you operate in more than one state?
Of course, it is very exhausting during show season. I won't lie to you. But I also do have a full-time job. So I'm a contracts coordinator by day and a ceramic artist by night, so to speak. But there are challenges of included with the book as well, just getting my computer work done and making things and getting them made on time, completing custom orders. I wholesale a little bit as well. So it is very time consuming, and just really, I think the biggest challenge is prioritizing and saying what actually needs to get done first, and making sure I have the time and the resources to be able to get that done to move forward. But it's so much fun. I love every minute of it.
Now, when you were younger, you underwent surgery to correct scoliosis, and how did that impact your art making process?
Yes, so that actually, I say it really jump-started my art making process. I had the scoliosis surgery when I was in 8th grade at the time. And when I had the surgery, I was really big into dancing. I was doing Irish step dancing, and that was my passion. I did it all the time. And of course, with a major traumatic back surgery, you really can't dance. So part of my recovery was for a year, I really couldn't do much of anything. And at that time, my mom signed me up for a student pottery class, just beginner kids class. And I fell in love with it, really, just being able to use my hands and to express myself in that way. The relationship between the potter and the clay is something that's just so interesting to me. The clay, depending on the weather, it seems to have a mind of its own, of course. And I really just love the whole process of making something with your hands, firing it, getting it back, glazing it, firing it again, and watching it just really transform. And that really just was such a passion for me. I didn't really go back to Irish step dancing. I tried it when I was able to, and I thought, you know what, pottery is just where it's at. And so I ended up getting my ceramics degree from Anderson University in Anderson, South Carolina. And honestly, if I hadn't had the back surgery, I don't know if I would have ever taken a pottery class. And so what seemed like the worst thing that could have happened to a middle schooler ended up being something that really transformed my life. And it's just amazing to to be able to look back at that and see that process, and see how far I've come just based on that experience.
How do you find balance between work, your faith, pottery, marketing your book, and having free time in your life?
That's a great question. Um, it is hard for sure, and some days I juggle it better than others. But I would have to say that, of course, my faith comes first, and so everything I do for the glory of God, and especially the book because He's the one who told me to write it, and none of this would have happened without Him. And just really keeping that as my focus as I move throughout the day. So, honoring God in the workplace, moving forward with that. And then in my free time, spending that time in the studio and just moving forward with that with the sole intention that this is His will right now. This is what He has me doing. And when He wants me to do something else, He will tell me, and His will could change at any moment. The pottery business could change at any moment. My job could change at any moment. But just keeping my eyes on God and my faith in Him.
My final question is, what is it like to live and work in southern Appalachia?
It's a lot of fun. I'm originally from upstate South Carolina, and so I moved during the pandemic. I moved up to Asheville, and it is just amazing. I love the mountains. It's just so beautiful seeing them on my drive every day, and seeing how they change, especially now in the fall, seeing the leaves change. And there's such an amazing art community up here, especially potters. Everybody just loves to help each other and give advice. I'm in a studio with several other potters, and I just really love that community. And so it's been a great experience. And you'll have to force me out of here. I love it here.
Morgan, you were an amazing guest, and I thank you for appearing on the Heartland Author podcast.
Thank you so much, Aaron, and I love listening to your podcast. You have great interviews.
Morgan was a wonderful guest to interview. If you go to my Instagram page at AAC Scribe on Instagram, you will see a photo of a drink coaster I made as part of a high school ceramic art project many years ago. Obviously, I am not as good at making poetry and ceramics as Morgan is. This is Aaron Apollo Camp reminding y'all to write your imagination. Bye for now. You can learn more about me and my book writing projects at campaaronapollo.wixsite.com/authoraac. You can follow me on Facebook at AuthorAAC and on Instagram at AAC Scribe. Copyright 2023, Aaron Apollo Camp, all rights reserved. This podcast episode is intended for the private listening of our audience. Any reuse or retransmission of this podcast episode without the express written consent of the podcast host is prohibited, except under fair use guidelines. Royalty-free music and sound effects obtained from https://www.zapsplat.com.